My name is Eleanor, and at 34, I've learned that sometimes the most devastating blows come when you least expect them. For 8 years, I stood proudly beside my husband Michael, watching his software development career flourish while building my own path in digital marketing. We were the perfect Seattle tech power couple until a 2 a.m. phone call shattered everything. His boss, Vivian Reed, called to inform me with chilling confidence, "He's mine." She had no idea that her arrogance would be her downfall, or that my calculated response would systematically dismantle her entire legacy. Before I tell you how I turned this betrayal into justice, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to join others who've found the strength to stand up against workplace betrayal. I grew up in a modest home in Portland, Oregon, where my parents instilled in me the value of hard work and integrity. They weren't wealthy, but they made sure I had opportunities they never did. My father worked in construction, while my mother taught at the local elementary school. Their determination to provide me with a good education, despite financial constraints, shaped my approach to challenges. Methodical, resourceful, and always with a plan. College was a turning point for me. I majored in marketing and communications at the University of Washington, working part-time jobs to help cover expenses. Those years taught me how to balance multiple responsibilities and stay focused under pressure, skills that would prove invaluable later in my career and personal life. After graduation, I didn't land my dream job immediately. Instead, I started at a small marketing agency, answering phones and managing social media accounts for local businesses. I was determined to prove myself, staying late to learn new skills and volunteering for challenging projects others avoided. Within 3 years, I had worked my way up to account manager handling major clients. My reputation as someone who remained level-headed during crises caught the attention of larger agencies. By the time I was 28, I had secured a position as digital marketing director at Mediacraft, a mid-sized company with prestigious clients. I specialized in crisis management and strategic communications, another skill that would serve me well when my personal life imploded. Michael's journey to tech success followed a different path. He discovered his passion for coding as a teenager, spending countless hours creating simple games and websites in his parents' basement in Chicago. His natural talent for solving complex problems through elegant code earned him a scholarship to study computer science at Stanford. Despite his brilliant mind, Michael's career didn't take off immediately after graduation. The competition in Silicon Valley was fierce, and his introverted nature made networking challenging. He bounced between startups that promised the world but folded within months. These setbacks never dampened his enthusiasm for coding, but they did affect his confidence. His breakthrough came when he developed an innovative algorithm that significantly improved database efficiency. This caught the attention of several established companies, and Michael finally began receiving recognition for his talents. His career trajectory shifted upward as he built a reputation as the guy who could solve seemingly impossible technical problems. We met at a tech industry networking event 6 years ago. I was there representing my agency while Michael was reluctantly making connections at his colleagues' insistence. He stood alone by the refreshment table, looking uncomfortable in a crowd of extroverted networkers. I approached him after overhearing his passionate explanation of a coding solution to another attendee who clearly wasn't understanding its significance. There was something captivating about his enthusiasm and brilliance when discussing his work. "That sounded fascinating, even though half of it went over my head," I said, introducing myself. His surprise at my genuine interest quickly turned into an animated conversation that lasted hours. We connected not just over our complementary professional skills. his technical expertise and my communication abilities, but also our shared values of integrity and hard work. Our relationship progressed quickly. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Michael's quiet confidence complemented my more outgoing nature perfectly. We supported each other through career challenges, celebrated victories together, and built a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding. After 2 years of dating, Michael proposed during a hiking trip to Mount Rainier. We were married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends and family, starting our life together with optimism and shared dreams. The early years of our marriage were marked by both struggles and triumphs. Michael continued facing career instability while I steadily advanced at my agency. When he was between jobs, I supported us financially without complaint. When I faced difficult clients or workplace challenges, he provided unwavering emotional support and practical advice. This pattern of mutual support defined our relationship. We were genuinely each other's biggest cheerleaders, never competing, but always collaborating to build our best life together. We saved diligently, dreaming of owning a home and eventually starting a family. Last year, everything seemed to fall into place. Michael received an offer from Prism Tech, one of the most prestigious software companies in Seattle. The position came with a substantial salary increase, impressive benefits, and the career stability he had worked so hard to achieve. Around the same time, I was promoted to senior director at my agency, with a significant raise and more creative control over client strategies. With our combined incomes, we finally purchased our first home, a charming 3-bedroom house in a quiet Seattle neighborhood with excellent schools nearby. The house represented everything we had worked for: stability, success, and a foundation for our future family. We spent weekends painting walls, planting a garden, and making it truly ours. In those moments, surrounded by paint swatches and furniture catalogues, I believed we had achieved our version of the American dream. Michael's new position at Prism was demanding from the start. The company was known for its innovative products and competitive work environment. He regularly stayed late at the office, coming home exhausted but exhilarated by the challenging projects and brilliant colleagues. "This is everything I've worked for," he would say, his eyes bright despite the fatigue. "I'm finally working with people who speak my language." I supported his dedication, understanding that establishing himself at a new company required extra effort. I packed nutritious lunches, ensured he had clean clothes for work, and tried not to complain about the long hours. This was his moment, and I wanted to be the supportive partner he deserved. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the subtle changes that began occurring within weeks of him starting at Prism. The long hours grew even longer. Work emergencies interrupted our weekend plans with increasing frequency. When he was home, he seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone for messages. I also should have questioned the company culture more thoroughly. Michael mentioned offhand comments about Prism's intense environment, where personal boundaries were often blurred in service to project deadlines. There were stories of executives calling employees at all hours, mandatory social events, and an unspoken expectation that work should come before all else. These were red flags we both dismissed in the excitement of his new opportunity. I rationalized that all prestigious companies had demanding cultures, and this was simply the price of success in the tech industry. Neither of us could have imagined how deeply these blurred boundaries would eventually impact our marriage. Vivian Reed was something of a legend in Seattle's tech community. As co-founder and chief technology officer of Prism Tech, she had broken through the notorious glass ceiling of the male-dominated industry in her early 30s. Now, in her mid-40s, her reputation for brilliance was matched only by her ruthlessness in business. Business magazines regularly featured Vivian on their covers, the rare female tech executive who had succeeded on her own terms. She leveraged this publicity masterfully, positioning herself as an advocate for women in technology and a mentor to rising female talents. Her TED Talk about breaking barriers had over 5 million views, and she sat on various boards promoting gender diversity in STEM fields. "She's incredible," Michael had said after his interview at Prism. "The questions she asked showed she understood my code on a level most executives wouldn't. She's technically brilliant and running a company. That's rare." What these glossy profiles didn't mention were the whispers that followed Vivian throughout the industry. Former employees spoke of her volatile temperament, her tendency to take credit for others' work, and her habit of playing favourites. These rumours were easily dismissed as jealousy or sexism, the typical backlash successful women often face in male-dominated fields. Michael was initially thrilled to be working under Vivian's leadership. He described her as demanding but inspiring, pushing the team to excellence through her own example of tireless work ethic. He seemed genuinely honoured when she began taking a special interest in his projects, offering direct feedback and inviting him to high-level meetings unusual for someone at his level. I first met Vivian at Prism's summer party, a lavish affair held at a waterfront venue. She was exactly as I'd imagined from media coverage, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, radiating confidence as she worked the room. When Michael introduced us, her handshake was firm, her smile practiced. "Eleanor, I've heard so much about you," she said, her eyes evaluating me quickly. "Michael mentions your marketing expertise often. We should talk sometime. Prism is always looking to improve our brand strategy." The conversation was brief, but left me with an uneasy feeling I couldn't quite place. Perhaps it was how her attention remained fixed on Michael, even while speaking to me, or the proprietary way she placed her hand on his arm when calling him away to meet another executive. "Your husband is quite the asset to our team," she told me before departing. "We have big plans for him." Something in her tone made the statement feel less like professional praise and more like a declaration of ownership. Over the following months, I encountered Vivian at several company events. Each interaction reinforced my initial discomfort. She always seemed to appear whenever Michael and I were conversing with others, inserting herself between us with practiced ease. She addressed me with superficial politeness while simultaneously establishing her deeper connection with Michael through inside jokes and references to projects I wasn't privy to. At a holiday party, I overheard her introducing Michael to investors as "my extraordinary find" and the future of Prism's innovation team. The pride in her voice wasn't just professional. There was an intimacy to it that sent a chill down my spine. When she caught me watching, she raised her glass in my direction, her smile never reaching her eyes. I tried discussing these observations with Michael, but he brushed off my concerns. "That's just how executives talk about promising employees," he said. "It's good for my career to have the CTO's attention. She's helping me navigate company politics." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to silence the alarm bells ringing in my head. After all, Vivian was a prominent advocate for women in tech. Surely she wouldn't be undermining another woman by pursuing her husband. I told myself I was being paranoid, allowing insecurity to colour my perceptions. Meanwhile, subtle changes in Michael became increasingly difficult to ignore. He began dressing differently. Expensive new shirts replacing his comfortable standards, a pricey watch appearing on his wrist as a company gift for exceptional performance. His casual style evolved into something more polished, more corporate, more Prism. His schedule became increasingly unpredictable. Dinner plans were cancelled due to unexpected project developments. Weekend hikes were postponed for emergency debugging sessions. Our traditional Sunday brunches disappeared entirely, replaced by work calls and emails. When I expressed frustration about these changes, Michael became defensive. "This is what success looks like, Eleanor. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices to move up." Vivian worked 80-hour weeks to build Prism. She expects the same dedication from her team. Vivian's name entered our conversations with increasing frequency. Vivian thought his approach to the database architecture was innovative. Vivian invited him to represent Prism at an exclusive tech conference. Vivian believed he had executive potential if he continued on this trajectory. The final warning sign came on our anniversary. I had made reservations at the restaurant where we'd had our first date, planning a special evening to reconnect amid his crazy work schedule. 2 hours before dinner, Michael called. "I'm so sorry, Elle. Vivian needs the entire team to address a critical issue with the new release. There's no way I can make dinner." "It's our anniversary," I said quietly. There was a pause, then muffled voices in the background. "I know, and I'll make it up to you this weekend, I promise. This is just really bad timing." Later that evening, I called his office line thinking I'd leave a message letting him know I wasn't angry. The night security guard answered. "Engineering department, they all left hours ago. Mr. Harrison, let me check." Yes, he signed out at 6 p.m. with Ms. Reed. That was the moment suspicion crystallized into certainty. Something wasn't right, and it was time to stop ignoring the evidence. I wasn't going to accuse without proof, but I would no longer dismiss the warning signs as my imagination. The week that led to my world unraveling began ordinarily enough. Michael announced on Monday morning that he would be leading a critical 3-day project that required round-the-clock attention. "We're implementing a major system architecture change," he explained while packing his laptop. "The whole team will be pulling all-nighters to meet the deadline. Vivian's staking a lot on this release." I nodded, having heard similar explanations many times before. "Should I bring dinner for you and the team? I could pick up something around 7. Michael tensed, almost imperceptibly. "No need. Vivian's arranging catering for everyone. The security protocols are pretty strict right now with this release. It would be complicated getting you clearance to come up." This was new. I had delivered food to his floor several times before without issue. When I pointed this out, Michael became flustered. "Things are different with this project. It's classified, potential acquisition implications." Before I could respond, he kissed me quickly on the cheek and headed out, leaving behind the lingering scent of an unfamiliar cologne, something more expensive than his usual brand. That evening, I tried calling Michael around 8 to check how things were going. The call went straight to voicemail. I sent a text wishing him luck with the project. The response came nearly an hour later. "Thanks, swamped, talk tomorrow." And something prompted me to open our location-sharing app, a mutual safety measure we'd established years ago. According to the app, Michael wasn't at Prism's downtown offices. His location showed him across the lake in Bellevue, in an upscale residential area. The location updated once more before disappearing entirely. He had turned off location services. A cold sensation settled in my stomach. Still, I held back from jumping to conclusions. There could be legitimate reasons for him to be in Bellevue. Perhaps they were working from Prism's smaller satellite office or at a client's location. The next morning, I checked our joint credit card account while paying bills. Another normal task that yielded abnormal results. There was a charge from the previous night at the Lakeside Hotel in Bellevue. The hotel's website described it as Seattle's most luxurious boutique hotel experience. That evening, Michael called to say he wouldn't be home again. His voice sounded hollow, rehearsed as he repeated similar explanations about the critical project timeline. I listened silently, the hotel charge burning in my mind. "Is there anything you want to tell me, Michael?" I asked finally. The pause before his response was telling. "What do you mean, nothing?" I said. "Just checking if you need anything from home." His relief was palpable. "I'm all set. Hopefully back tomorrow night. Love you." The words rang empty. I spent that night researching the situation without allowing emotion to cloud my judgment. This approach had served me well in my career. Assess the facts, identify patterns, develop a strategy. I would not confront Michael without understanding the full picture. I sat at our dining table until dawn, a notebook filling with observations, timeline discrepancies, and changed behaviors. The pattern was undeniable, yet I still needed absolute certainty before taking action. Thursday night arrived with another text from Michael. This one even briefer, project still critical. Staying at office again tonight, don't wait up. When he came home Friday evening, the tension between us was thick enough to cut with a knife. Michael moved differently, spoke differently, like a man performing a role rather than being himself. He placed his overnight bag carefully in the laundry room rather than dropping it in our bedroom as usual. "How did the project go?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral as I prepared dinner. "Exhausting but successful," he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "We met all the benchmarks. Vivian's pleased." We ate in uncomfortable silence, the questions burning inside me, remaining unspoken. I had decided not to confront without irrefutable evidence. Accusations based on suspicion alone would only lead to denials and damaged trust. If my suspicions were somehow wrong, I didn't want to harm our relationship irreparably. After dinner, Michael claimed exhaustion and headed to bed early. As he showered, I noticed his phone lighting up with a message. I had never invaded his privacy before, but something fundamental had shifted in our relationship. The message preview showed Vivian Reed and the words, "Last night was." I turned away, my decision made. I would not check his phone or follow him or engage in behavior that diminished me. Instead, I would wait for the truth to reveal itself, which it did far sooner and more dramatically than I could have anticipated. That night, I slept in the guest room, claiming I didn't want to disturb his much-needed rest. In reality, I couldn't bear to lie beside him while this unspoken betrayal hung between us. I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, mentally rehearsing different versions of the difficult conversation we needed to have. At precisely 2:13 a.m., my phone rang. The screen displayed an unknown number. Thinking it might be Michael calling from another phone, I answered quickly. "Hello," I said, my voice thick with interrupted sleep. "Is this Eleanor Harrison?" The woman's voice was smooth, confident, with the slight slur suggesting expensive wine. "Yes. Who's calling at this hour?" A soft laugh came through the speaker. "This is Vivian Reed, Michael's boss. I believe we've met a few times." My body went cold, but my mind suddenly became crystal clear. Years of handling PR crises had trained me to remain calm in shocking situations. Something told me this call was important, so I quietly activated my phone's recording function, a habit from recording client meetings and negotiations. "Yes, of course," I responded evenly. "Is everything all right? Is Michael okay?" "Michael is perfectly fine," Vivian replied, her tone laced with amusement. "In fact, he's asleep right next to me right now. He's been working so hard lately, he's absolutely exhausted." The statement hung in the air like poison gas. I said nothing, waiting. "Eleanor, I thought you should know he's with me now. He's mine. He's been mine for months. It's time you accepted that." Her voice carried no malice, just the matter-of-fact confidence of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted. The casual cruelty took my breath away. "I see," I managed to say, my training in crisis management taking over. "And you're calling me at 2 a.m. to tell me this because—" She laughed again. "I thought it would be easier this way. Michael struggles with difficult conversations. He's been trying to find the right time to tell you it's over, but he's too kind. I'm simply expediting the inevitable." "How considerate of you," I said, surprised by my own calm. "Does Michael know you're making this call?" "He'll understand it was necessary," she replied dismissively. "Look, I'm not heartless. I know this hurts, but Michael's career is taking off under my guidance. We connect intellectually in ways you can't possibly understand. Sometimes marriages end. It's nobody's fault." Every word was calculated to diminish me, to position her as the superior choice. I recognized the tactic clearly. I'd studied psychological manipulation in my crisis management training. She was attempting to establish dominance while seemingly offering compassion. "Thank you for your concern, Vivian," I said, my voice steady. "Is there anything else you wanted to discuss at 2:13 in the morning?" My refusal to react emotionally seemed to irritate her. "Just that Michael will be collecting his things tomorrow. I've already spoken with our legal team about expediting whatever paperwork is necessary. Prism can recommend excellent divorce attorneys." "How efficient," I replied. "Is Michael available to speak?" "He's asleep," she repeated, "and I don't want to wake him. He has an important presentation on Monday." I understand. Well, thank you for calling Vivian. This has been very informative. I ended the call before she could respond, then sat in the darkness, the recording saved automatically to my cloud account. The numbness that had carried me through the conversation began to fade, replaced by waves of nausea and a deep, searing pain. Yet even as tears threatened, my mind was already working, processing, planning. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. This was professional misconduct on a massive scale. Vivian hadn't just crossed a line, she had obliterated it with the confident assumption that there would be no consequences. She had made a critical error in judgment. She had mistaken my composure for weakness, my politeness for passivity. She had no idea who she was dealing with or what I was capable of when provoked. I didn't sleep again that night. Instead, I began researching company policies, employment laws, and documenting everything I could remember about Michael's changing behaviour over the past months. By dawn, I had the outline of a plan, one that would require precision timing and absolute control of my emotions. Vivian thought she held all the power. By this time tomorrow, she would understand just how profoundly wrong she was. The hours after Vivian's call passed in a strange, detached clarity. The initial shock had crystallized into something colder and more focused. I recognized this state from my professional experience handling marketing crises. It was the calm, analytical mindset that emerges when emotions must be temporarily set aside to deal with immediate threats. I moved through our home in the pre-dawn darkness, systematically gathering information. Our shared laptop contained the cloud backups of Michael's personal emails. He had logged in months ago and never signed out a careless oversight that now provided me with critical insights. The emails told a story that confirmed my worst suspicions. It had started 6 months earlier with late-night work sessions followed by drinks to discuss his career trajectory. Vivian had positioned herself as his mentor champion and career guide. The progression from professional admiration to personal involvement was documented in meeting invitations with increasingly blurred boundaries. Calendar entries labeled Strategy Dinner showed reservations at exclusive restaurants, far from the watchful eyes of other Prism employees. Hotel bookings disguised as off-site planning retreats appeared with increasing frequency. Expense reports submitted to Prism showed wine selections costing hundreds of dollars, spa treatments, and weekend getaways thinly veiled as executive strategy sessions. More damning were the photos attached to some emails, candid shots from company events showing subtle but unmistakable intimate gestures between them, Vivian's hand lingering on Michael's lower back. Their heads bent close together in conversation, isolated from the group. The progression of their physical proximity was evident across months of company functions. I downloaded everything methodically, organizing files with the precision I brought to major marketing campaigns. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about documenting a clear pattern of professional misconduct by a company executive. Next, I researched Prism Tech's publicly available information. Their employee handbook was accessible through Michael's company portal, and it explicitly prohibited relationships between managers and direct reports. The policy stated, to avoid conflicts of interest, favoritism, and potential exploitation. Romantic or sexual relationships between supervisors and their subordinates are strictly prohibited. More interestingly, I discovered that Prism was in the final stages of being acquired by Meridian Global, a conservative multinational corporation known for its strict ethical guidelines and zero-tolerance policies regarding workplace misconduct. The acquisition announcement mentioned shared values of integrity and professional excellence, language that suddenly seemed relevant to my situation. I checked financial news sources, confirming that the Prism Meridian deal was scheduled to close within 2 weeks. The timing couldn't have been more perfect for what I was contemplating. Around 7 a.m., I called my closest friend Sarah, a corporate attorney specializing in employment law. "I need confidential advice," I said when she answered. "Professional, not personal." Sarah listened without interruption as I outlined the situation in clinical terms, presenting the facts without emotional coloring. When I finished, the silence stretched for several seconds. "Eleanor," she finally said, "what you've described isn't just a personal betrayal. It's textbook workplace harassment and abuse of power. The CTO having an affair with a direct report violates every corporate ethics policy I can think of." "That's what I thought," I replied. "What would your professional recommendation be?" "Document everything. Record dates, times, specific incidents. Gather any evidence you can legally obtain. Then take it directly to the CEO or board, not HR. HR protects the company, not employees. With an acquisition pending, the board will be hypersensitive to anything that could jeopardize the deal." I thanked her and hung up, then made another call, this one to my therapist, requesting an emergency session that afternoon. I would need emotional support for what lay ahead, but first I needed to handle the immediate situation with Michael. As if on cue, I heard the front door open. Michael entered the kitchen looking dishevelled, unshaven, and clearly surprised to find me sitting calmly at the dining table with my laptop open. "You're up early," he said, cautiously placing his overnight bag by the door. "Yes," I replied evenly. "Difficult to sleep after receiving a 2 a.m. call from your boss." The colour drained from his face. He gripped the back of a chair for support, his knuckles whitening. "Vivian called you." His voice was barely audible. "She did. She was quite informative. Would you like to hear the recording?" Without waiting for his response, I played the audio. Vivian's slightly slurred voice filled our kitchen, her cruel words echoing in the morning light. Michael sank into a chair, his head in his hands. When the recording ended, the silence between us was deafening. I closed my laptop and looked directly at him, waiting. "Eleanor, I can explain," he began, his voice breaking. "I'm listening," I said quietly. What followed was a halting, sometimes contradictory account that gradually revealed the full picture. According to Michael, Vivian had taken a special interest in him from the beginning, offering mentorship that quickly evolved into something more personal. Initial meetings to discuss projects extended into dinners where she shared insider knowledge about company politics and advised him on advancing his career. "She made me feel special chosen," he admitted, "like I was finally being recognized for my abilities." The professional relationship shifted when Vivian began sharing personal confidences and initiating physical contact. A hand on his arm, a hug that lasted too long. She created situations where they were alone together, working late when others had gone home. "I knew it was wrong," Michael said, tears streaming down his face. "But I was afraid of what would happen if I rejected her advances. She controls every aspect of the technical division. One word from her, and my career at Prism would be over before it began." He described how Vivian had systematically isolated him from other team members, making him dependent on her approval and guidance. She assigned him to projects that required them to work closely together, creating opportunities for their relationship to deepen. "Did you ever say no?" I asked, my voice neutral despite the turmoil inside. Michael's hesitation told me everything. "At first, I tried to keep things professional," he said finally, "but she made it clear that my future at Prism was tied to our relationship. She never explicitly threatened me, but the implication was always there. And last night," I pressed. He looked down at his hands. "She invited me to discuss the presentation for Monday. We had dinner at her place. She opened wine and I should have left. I knew I should have left. I studied my husband, this man I thought I knew completely. He appeared genuinely remorseful, yet something about his narrative rang hollow. He was casting himself solely as a victim, absolving himself of responsibility. "Michael," I said carefully, "I need you to understand something clearly. What Vivian has done is professional misconduct. Her behavior constitutes sexual harassment and abuse of power. But you made choices too. You chose not to tell me what was happening. You chose to lie about your whereabouts. You participated in the deception. He nodded miserably. I know. I was weak. I was a coward. I didn't know how to get out of the situation without destroying everything. There's a way out now, I said, opening my laptop again. But I need to know if you're willing to be completely honest about everything that's happened. Michael looked up, confusion replacing shame on his face. What do you mean? I mean that Vivian's behavior isn't just a betrayal of our marriage. It's a violation of Prism's policies and potentially illegal. If you're willing to tell the truth, the complete truth, there's a way to address this that protects your career and holds her accountable. I explained my preliminary findings about Prism's policies and the pending acquisition. Meridian Global won't want a scandal involving sexual misconduct by a top executive. The board will act swiftly to protect the acquisition. As I outlined my strategy, Michael's expression shifted from dejection to cautious hope. Do you think they would believe me over her? He asked. She's a founding executive. I'm just a recent hire. They'll believe evidence, I replied. And we have that. But this only works if you're completely transparent from this point forward. I need to know everything, every meeting, every text, every inappropriate interaction. No more lies, no more omissions. Michael hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'll tell you everything. But Eleanor, what about us? After what I've done, I held up my hand to stop him. I can't answer that now. Right now, we deal with the professional situation. Personal decisions come later. He accepted this with a nod, looking both relieved and terrified. What do we do first? First, I said, you need to call Vivian. Tell her I was upset, but not hostile. Say I asked for time to process everything. Meanwhile, I'll be preparing for a meeting with Prism's CEO. Michael's eyes widened. You're going directly to William Parker. Tomorrow morning, I confirmed, and Vivian won't see it coming. As we discussed the details, my phone rang. The screen displayed Vivian's name. She had apparently saved her number in my phone during the night call. I answered on speaker. Hello, Vivian. Eleanor, she said smoothly. I wanted to check in. Michael seems distressed this morning. I hope my call didn't cause too much disruption. The calculated concern in her voice made my skin crawl, but I maintained my composure. We're having an honest conversation, I replied. It was overdue. I'm glad to hear that, she said, sounding genuinely pleased. Clarity is always best in these situations. I assume Michael has explained the arrangements. Michael looked panicked, but I gave him a reassuring nod. We're still discussing next steps, I said. These things take time. Of course, Vivian responded, her tone suggesting she was granting a generous concession. Michael is worth waiting for. I hope we can all handle this maturely. That's my intention, I said. I appreciate your direct approach, Vivian. It's clarified many things for me. After ending the call, I turned to Michael. She's confident. Overconfident. She has no idea what's coming. The plan was taking shape, crystallizing into something precise and devastating. Vivian Reed had built her career on taking what she wanted without consequences. She was about to learn that some actions carry a very high price. The morning of my planned confrontation dawned bright and clear. I rose early, selecting my outfit with careful consideration, a navy blue tailored suit that projected confidence and professionalism without being intimidating. My appearance needed to strike the perfect balance between approachable and authoritative. Michael had barely slept, his face drawn and anxious as he prepared for his role in the day's events. We had spent the previous afternoon documenting every interaction between him and Vivian, creating a detailed timeline of how their professional relationship had transformed into inappropriate territory. The pattern was clear and damning when laid out chronologically. Remember, I told Michael as he prepared to leave, your only job today is to act normally. If Vivian contacts you, be vague but not suspicious. Say, I'm processing everything and we're talking through options. He nodded, his hands shaking slightly as he fastened his watch. What if she asks about the recording? Tell her I mentioned the call but didn't indicate I had recorded it. That gives us an element of surprise. I straightened his collar, an automatic gesture from happier times. Are you sure you're ready for this? No, he admitted, but it's the right thing to do. I should have stood up to her months ago. Michael left for Prism first, maintaining the appearance of a normal workday. I spent another hour organising the documentation into a clear, compelling presentation before heading out myself. As I drove toward downtown Seattle, my phone rang. It was Michael. She called me into her office, he said in a hushed voice. She wants to know when I'm moving out. I told her we're still discussing everything, but she's pushing for a timeline. Perfect, I replied. Tell her you need the weekend to sort things out. Did she mention the acquisition? Yes, she said the Meridian deal is almost finalised, and once it closes, she'll have even more authority to advance my career. She implied there might be a director position opening up for me. The blatant quid pro quo made my resolve even stronger. Good, keep her talking if you can. I'll be there in 30 minutes. When I arrived at Prism Tech's sleek downtown headquarters, I approached the front desk with calm confidence. I'm Eleanor Harrison, I told the receptionist. I need to speak with William Parker regarding an urgent matter concerning the Meridian acquisition. The mention of the acquisition worked as expected. Within minutes, I was escorted to a waiting area outside the executive offices. Through the glass walls, I could see Vivian in her corner office phone pressed to her ear, gesturing animatedly. She noticed me almost immediately, her expression shifting from surprise to confusion to thinly veiled anger. I smiled politely and nodded in acknowledgement. She ended her call abruptly and emerged from her office, striding toward me with forced casualness. Eleanor, she said, extending her hand as if our 2 a.m. conversation had never happened. This is unexpected. Is everything all right? I'm here to speak with William, I replied, accepting her handshake with firm politeness. Personal matter. A flash of concern crossed her face. William is extremely busy with acquisition preparations. Perhaps I can help instead. We should talk anyway, given the circumstances. Thank you, but this requires William specifically. I maintained my pleasant expression. It directly impacts the Meridian deal. Before she could respond, a door opened and William Parker Prism's CEO emerged with his assistant. Mrs. Harrison, he said, extending his hand, I understand you have an urgent matter to discuss. Please come in, Vivian interrupted smoothly. William, I should join this meeting. If it concerns the acquisition, I should be informed. William looked between us, sensing tension. Is that necessary, Eleanor? Actually, I said carefully, the matter I need to discuss involves Ms. Reed directly. I believe it would be more appropriate to speak privately first, and then include her if you deem it necessary. William's expression sharpened with interest. I see. Vivian, please excuse us. I'll call you in if needed. The look Vivian gave me as I entered William's office contained equal parts fury and disbelief. She wasn't accustomed to being excluded or overruled. William's office was minimalist and impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. He gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs, facing his desk. Now, Mrs. Harrison, what's this urgent matter concerning our acquisition and my CTO? I placed my tablet on the desk between us. Mr. Parker, I'm here to report serious misconduct that violates Prism's policies and could potentially jeopardize your acquisition by Meridian Global. I have documentation supporting everything I'm about to share. William's expression remained neutral, but his posture stiffened. Continue. Vivian Reed has been engaged in an inappropriate sexual relationship with my husband, Michael Harrison, who reports directly to her. She has leveraged her position of power to pressure him into this relationship, implying that his career advancement depends on his participation. I kept my voice steady and factual, presenting the situation as I would a business case rather than a personal grievance. That's a serious accusation, William said carefully. I assume you have evidence beyond suspicion. In response, I played the recording of Vivian's late-night call. William's expression darkened as he listened to his CTO's slurred voice, claiming ownership of an employee and offering company resources for divorce proceedings. When the recording ended, I continued, I also have documentation showing a pattern of escalating boundary violations, misuse of company resources to facilitate their relationship, and explicit quid pro quo offers of career advancement in exchange for personal involvement. I opened my tablet and showed him the timeline Michael and I had created, complete with hotel receipts, expense reports for dinners, coded as business meetings, and text messages with inappropriate content. May I? William asked, reaching for the tablet. He scrolled through the evidence silently, his expression growing increasingly grim. How did you obtain these documents? Through shared accounts my husband and I maintain. Michael has provided written consent for me to access and share these records. I handed him Michael's signed statement. He's willing to speak with you directly to confirm everything. William set the tablet down and steepled his fingers. Mrs. Harrison, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. This is indeed concerning, particularly with the Meridian acquisition pending. Their ethics requirements are exceptionally stringent. I'm aware, I replied. That's partly why I came directly to you rather than going through HR. I understand the sensitivity of the timing. What exactly are you hoping to achieve here? William asked bluntly. It was the question I had prepared for most carefully. My answer needed to be reasonable and focused on organizational integrity rather than personal vengeance. I'm seeking appropriate accountability according to PRISM's own policies on workplace relationships and abuse of power. The specifics of that accountability are for you and the board to determine, but I believe the situation requires immediate action to protect both the company and other employees who might be vulnerable to similar misconduct. William nodded slowly. I'd like to involve our general counsel in this discussion if you don't object. Not at all, I agreed. He pressed his intercom and requested the company's lead attorney join us immediately. Within minutes, a serious-looking woman in her 50s entered the office. Elizabeth, we have a situation, William said, gesturing toward me. Mrs. Harrison has provided evidence of misconduct by Vivian that potentially violates our policies and could impact the Meridian deal. I need your assessment. Elizabeth reviewed the evidence with practiced efficiency, occasionally asking clarifying questions about dates and specific interactions. Finally, she looked up. The relationship clearly violates our non-fraternization policy. The power differential and implied career consequences make it a textbook case of sexual harassment. The recording alone is damning, but the pattern of behavior documented here makes our liability exposure significant. She turned to me. Have you consulted legal counsel about this matter? I've received general advice about workplace harassment situations, but I'm not pursuing legal action at this time. My goal is appropriate organizational response, not litigation. Elizabeth seemed to appreciate my measured approach. That's refreshing, but also unusual given the circumstances. May I ask why? I considered my answer carefully. Protracted legal battles benefit no one. They're emotionally exhausting and professionally damaging for all involved. I believe PRISM has the policies and leadership in place to handle this situation appropriately without court intervention. What I didn't say was that litigation would be slower and less devastating than what I had in mind. Corporate damage control would be swift and absolute, especially with an acquisition hanging in the balance. William and Elizabeth exchanged glances. We'll need to speak with Michael, Elizabeth said. He's in the building and available whenever you're ready, I replied. And Vivian should be given an opportunity to respond to these allegations, William added. I nodded. Of course. Due process is important. William's intercom buzzed. Sir Ms. Reed is quite insistent about joining your meeting. Send her in, William said after a moment's consideration. When Vivian entered the room, her confident stride faltered slightly at the sight of Elizabeth, and the materials spread across William's desk. She recovered quickly, her face composed into professional concern. I hope I'm not interrupting, but given my role in the acquisition, I felt it was important to be included in any discussions that might impact the deal. William gestured to an empty chair. Please sit down, Vivian. We're discussing a serious situation that directly involves you. Vivian's eyes flicked to me, then back to William. I see. Is this about Michael Harrison? Because if so, I should clarify that any personal relationship is being handled appropriately with HR's guidance. It was a bold lie. No such report had been filed with HR, as we all knew. Actually, I said quietly, we were just discussing this voice recording. I played the recording again. Watching Vivian's face as her own words filled the room was remarkable. The momentary shock followed by calculation as she assessed how to respond. When the recording ended, she let out a small laugh. I see what this looks like, but context is important. I had consumed alcohol at a company event and was attempting, admittedly poorly, to address a complicated situation. My words were inappropriate, and for that I apologize. William leaned forward. And what about the hotel charges billed to Prism? The private dinners coded as business expenses, the pattern of behaviour documented here over 6 months. Vivian's composure slipped for just a moment. I haven't seen this alleged documentation. Elizabeth pushed the tablet toward her. Take your time. We'd like your response to each item. As Vivian scrolled through the evidence, her breathing became slightly irregular, the only visible sign of her distress. She was too practiced at crisis management to show obvious panic. These interactions have been selectively presented to create a misleading narrative, she said finally. Michael and I have been working on sensitive projects requiring discretion. The personal nature of some communications reflects a mentorship relationship that he may have misinterpreted. We've requested Michael join this discussion, William said. I'd like to hear both perspectives directly. Vivian straightened, regaining her confidence. Of course. Though I'd like to point out that Eleanor is understandably emotional about this situation, which may be colouring her perception. Perhaps it would be better to discuss this after the Meridian deal closes, when we all have clearer heads. I don't think this can wait, Elizabeth interjected. The acquisition agreement includes moral clauses that would give Meridian grounds to withdraw if undisclosed ethical violations come to light after signing. The door opened, and Michael was escorted in by William's assistant. His face paled at the sight of all of us gathered around the evidence of his affair. Vivian immediately rose and approached him. Michael, I'm so glad you're here. There seems to be some confusion about our working relationship. Perhaps you could clarify for everyone. It was a masterful power move, putting him on the spot using their personal connection and her professional authority to pressure him into supporting her version of events. I saw Michael hesitate, the weight of months of manipulation evident in his uncertainty, but then he straightened his shoulders and looked directly at William rather than Vivian. Everything in that documentation is accurate, he said clearly. Vivian initiated a personal relationship shortly after I joined Prism. She indicated that my career advancement depended on our relationship continuing. When I expressed concerns about the professional implications, she assured me that as CTO, she was above the policies. I was wrong to participate, and I accept full responsibility for my actions, but there was a clear power imbalance that I felt unable to challenge. The room fell silent. Vivian's face hardened as she realized her control of the narrative had slipped away. This is absurd, she said coldly. Michael pursued me aggressively. I eventually relented against my better judgment. Now that his wife has discovered our relationship, he's reconstructing events to protect his marriage. That directly contradicts your recorded statement, Elizabeth pointed out. He's mine. He's been mine for months. Those aren't the words of someone being pursued. They suggest ownership and control. Vivian's eyes narrowed as she shifted strategies. Fine. There was a mutual attraction that developed into a relationship. It was a lapse in judgment on my part, but hardly the predatory situation being portrayed. I'm willing to accept appropriate consequences for violating the non-fraternization policy. William shook his head. This goes beyond policy violation, Vivian. Using your position to influence an employee's career in exchange for personal relations constitutes harassment. The company's liability exposure is significant. You can't be serious, Vivian said, incredulity creeping into her voice. Are you really considering jeopardizing everything we've built? Everything we're about to achieve with Meridian over a personal indiscretion? I built this company with you, William. Without me, there is no Prism Tech. Without our ethical standards and legal compliance, there is no Prism Tech, William corrected. The board will need to be informed immediately. As the reality of her situation dawned on Vivian, she turned to me, her expression cold. You orchestrated this, didn't you? All of it. The recording, the documentation, the timing with the acquisition. This isn't about harassment. This is revenge. I met her gaze steadily. This is about accountability, Vivian. You called me at 2 a.m. to inform me you were taking my husband. You expected no consequences because you're accustomed to using your power without repercussions. That was a miscalculation. William stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Elizabeth will begin a formal investigation immediately. Vivian, you'll be placed on administrative leave pending the board's decision. Michael, the same applies to you while we determine appropriate next steps. Please surrender your access credentials to security before leaving the building. Vivian's face drained of colour. Administrative leave during the acquisition, you can't be serious. The technical transition requires my oversight. We'll manage, William said firmly. The executive team will handle the transition until this matter is resolved. As security was called to escort Vivian and Michael out separately, Vivian approached me one last time. You have no idea what you've done, she hissed under her breath. This isn't over. I smiled slightly. Actually, I think it is. As I watched her being escorted from the executive floor, her proud posture rigid with fury, I felt no triumph or joy. Only a quiet certainty that justice was being served. The career she had built by taking whatever she wanted, regardless of ethical boundaries, was crumbling because she had finally targeted someone who refused to be a passive victim. William approached me as I prepared to leave. Mrs. Harrison, while I cannot discuss personnel matters in detail, I want you to know that the board takes these allegations extremely seriously. We will conduct a thorough investigation and take appropriate action. Thank you, I replied. That's all I'm asking for. As I walked through Prism's gleaming lobby toward the exit, I knew that this was just the beginning. The corporate world's response to scandal is swift and decisive. When financial interests are at stake, Vivian Reed's legacy was already unraveling thread by thread, and by the time the investigation concluded, there would be nothing left but a cautionary tale about the dangers of believing oneself untouchable. In the days following, my meeting at Prism Tech events unfolded with the ruthless efficiency that characterizes corporate damage control. The morning after my visit, Prism's board convened an emergency session to address the situation. By that afternoon, rumours were already circulating throughout the company about Vivian's sudden absence. I learned much of what happened through Michael, who had been contacted by Prism's internal investigation team. They conducted extensive interviews with him and several other employees who had witnessed Vivian's inappropriate behaviour over the years. According to Michael, once the first person came forward, others followed, revealing a pattern that extended well beyond our situation. There were at least 3 other employees she pursued before me. Michael told me, as we sat at opposite ends of our dining table, the distance between us symbolic of our fractured relationship. 2 of them left the company rather than risk their careers by speaking up. The third was transferred to a different department after rejecting her advances. The investigation moved with unprecedented speed, driven by the looming acquisition deadline. Meridian Global had been discreetly informed of the situation, and their representatives made it clear that the acquisition would proceed only if Prism demonstrated decisive action regarding the ethical breach. On the fourth day, news broke publicly. The Seattle Tech Journal published a brief announcement. Prism Tech CTO Vivian Reed steps down for personal reasons. The carefully worded press release cited her desire to pursue other opportunities and thanked her for her contributions to the company. Behind the bland corporate language lay a much harsher reality. According to Michael's contacts at Prism, Vivian had been given two options: resign immediately with a modest severance package and sign a non-disclosure agreement, or face termination for cause, with the full investigation findings made public. She had chosen resignation, likely hoping to salvage her reputation and career prospects. The following day, I received a call from William Parker. Mrs. Harrison, I wanted to inform you personally that our investigation has concluded. While I cannot share specific details due to confidentiality requirements, I can tell you that we've found substantial evidence supporting the concerns you raised. Thank you for letting me know, I replied. Has Michael been informed of his status? Yes, he has. Given the power dynamics involved and the evidence that Ms. Reed explicitly connected his professional advancement to their personal relationship, the board has determined that Michael was in a coercive situation. He will receive a formal reprimand for failing to report the policy violation, but his position is secure if he wishes to remain with Prism. I appreciated William's directness and professionalism. That seems fair. I'm glad the company recognized the complexity of the situation. We're implementing comprehensive changes to our reporting procedures to ensure nothing like this happens again, William added. Your handling of this situation was remarkably measured given the circumstances. After ending the call, I sat quietly absorbing the reality that Vivian Reed, the celebrated tech pioneer, media darling, and self-proclaimed champion for women in technology, had been effectively erased from Prism's leadership in less than a week. Her carefully constructed image had collapsed like a house of cards at the first real challenge to her behaviour. The industry reaction was swift and revealing. While the public announcement mentioned only her resignation for personal reasons, Silicon Valley operates on whisper networks. Within days, rumours of the real reason for her departure spread throughout the tech community. Former employees began sharing their own experiences with her management style on anonymous forums, painting a picture of a toxic leader who used her position to manipulate and control others. Vivian's once promising future evaporated almost overnight. The speaking engagements that had filled her calendar were quietly cancelled. Her social media accounts, previously updated daily with inspirational leadership quotes and tech insights, fell silent. The board positions she had held at various tech organizations were vacated without explanation. I received confirmation of her complete downfall 2 weeks later when a former colleague who worked for a venture capital firm called to catch up. "Did you hear about Vivian Reed?" she asked. "She's been approaching every major VC firm in the Valley with a new startup concept, but no one will touch her. Something happened at Prism that made her radioactive. Nobody's talking publicly, but privately, she's been blacklisted by every significant player in the industry." I murmured non-committally, neither confirming nor denying my involvement. The tech world had rendered its verdict on Vivian Reed without my needing to say a word. Meanwhile, the Prism Meridian acquisition proceeded smoothly, closing on schedule with minimal disruption. Prism's stock price, after a brief dip following Vivian's departure, recovered and then surged as the market responded positively to the acquisition terms. As for Michael and me, the resolution wasn't as clean or decisive. The betrayal had left wounds that couldn't be healed simply because justice had been served professionally. We agreed to a trial separation. Michael moved into a furnished apartment, giving us both space to process what had happened and decide whether our marriage could be salvaged. He began seeing a therapist to understand his own role in the affair, the weakness that had allowed him to be manipulated, but also the choices he had made along the way. "I don't expect forgiveness," he told me during one of our cautious conversations, "but I want you to know I'm working to understand why I didn't have the courage to resist or to be honest with you. You deserved better." I appreciated his accountability, but trust once broken is not easily restored. I began my own therapy journey, examining why I had ignored the warning signs for so long and how to rebuild my sense of self after such a profound betrayal. The experience transformed me in unexpected ways. The strength and clarity I had found in crisis remained with me in its aftermath. I became more assertive in my professional life, less willing to accommodate unreasonable demands or tolerate disrespect. Friends commented on the change, noting that I seemed more confident, more defined by my own boundaries. 3 months after Vivian's downfall, I received an unexpected job offer from Horizon Digital, a company known for its ethical leadership and supportive culture. They had heard about my strategic crisis management skills through industry channels, a euphemism that suggested they knew exactly who I was and what had happened at Prism. The position offered a significant advancement over my current role, with responsibilities that aligned perfectly with my strengths and career goals. I accepted, ready for a fresh start professionally while I continued sorting through my personal life. On my first day at Horizon, the CEO welcomed me personally. "We're thrilled to have someone with your integrity and strategic thinking on our team," she said warmly. Those qualities are rare and valuable in this industry. As for Vivian, her fall from grace was complete and seemingly irreversible. 6 months after her resignation, she attempted to launch a startup with her own funds, but could attract neither additional investors nor top talent. The company folded before ever releasing a product. Her carefully curated image as a champion for women in technology had been revealed as a facade, her true legacy, one of exploitation rather than empowerment. 1 year after the 2 a.m. phone call that had changed everything, I found myself attending a major tech conference in my new role at Horizon. As I mingled during a networking reception, I turned to find Vivian standing nearby, her expression freezing when she recognized me. The transformation in her was striking. Gone were the designer clothes and confident posture that had once defined her public persona. She looked diminished somehow, the aura of power and influence completely evaporated. Our eyes met briefly across the crowded room. I didn't approach her, nor she me. No words were necessary. The momentary connection acknowledged everything that had transpired between us. Her arrogance in believing she could take whatever she wanted without consequences, and my quiet determination that had ultimately ended her reign. She turned away, first slipping out a side door and disappearing from the event. It was the last time I ever saw her. That evening, as I returned to my hotel room, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of betrayal had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something different, a hard-won wisdom about human nature, power dynamics, and my own resilience. Michael and I were still finding our way forward, navigating the complex terrain between reconciliation and separation. Whether our marriage would ultimately survive remained uncertain, but we were approaching that question with honesty and mutual respect that had been missing during Vivian's manipulation. What was certain was that I had discovered a strength within myself that I hadn't known existed. Not the angry, destructive force of vengeance, but the steady, unstoppable power of principled action. I had faced one of my greatest fears, betrayal by those I trusted most, and emerged not broken, but clarified like metal tempered by fire. The woman who received that 2 a.m. call would never have believed she possessed the courage and strategic thinking to take down a tech industry icon. But the woman I had become knew exactly what she was capable of when pushed beyond her limits. That knowledge was the most valuable legacy of this painful chapter, not the satisfaction of Vivian's downfall, but the discovery of my own unwavering strength when it mattered most. Have you ever faced a situation where someone underestimated you and lived to regret it? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of quiet revenge against workplace abuse resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others find the courage to stand up for themselves when facing similar injustices. Remember, sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal isn't loud and dramatic. It's calm, calculated, and absolutely unstoppable.